The Great Khans are a group of raiders in the Fallout universe that have been around since the early days after the nuclear war and have a long, violent history. They started as a gang called the Khans in the ruins of California. Back then, they were known for raiding towns, stealing supplies, and surviving by force. They looked up to ancient Mongol warriors and believed in strength and loyalty to their tribe. Over time, the Khans were almost entirely wiped out in battles with the new California Republic. The survivors regrouped and renamed themselves the Great Khans, hoping to start over and become strong again. By the events of Fallout New Vegas, they are living in Red Rock Canyon, a very remote area in the Mojave Wasteland. The leader of the Great Khans is Papa Khan, an older man who still believes in the old ways, raiding, strength, and loyalty. But not everyone agrees with him. One of the younger members, Regis, wants the group to stop fighting and try to build a better future. He sees that the old ways only lead to more death and failure. The Great Khans have had problems with many other groups. They were once allied with Caesar's Legion, but broke away when they realized that they were being used. They also hate the NCR because of the Battle of Boulder City, where many Khans were killed. Now, they're stuck in the middle of a war and trying to figure out what to do next. In New Vegas, the player can help decide what happens to the Great Khans. They can join one of the major factions, be destroyed, or leave the Mojave to start over in Wyoming. No matter what happens, the Great Khans are one of the most well-known raider groups in the region, with a long history of survival and conflict. The Fiends are a violent and drug-addicted raider gang in the Mojave Wasteland. They live near New Vegas and are one of the biggest problems for the NCR in the area. They don't have a real goal, they just want chems, power, and destruction. The Fiends are based out of Vault 3, an old underground shelter that they've taken over. The vault is now full of trash, blood, and dead bodies. The gang members are always high on chems like Psycho, Jet, and Buff Out, which makes them aggressive and unpredictable. Most of them don't care if they live or die. The group is led by Motor Runner, a man in power armor who runs Vault 3. He's more organized than most of the Fiends, but still depends on chems and violence to stay in charge. There are also two other well-known Fiends, Cook and Violetta. Cook is a sadistic raider who uses a flamethrower and is known for horrible crimes. He also has a pet Brahmin named Queenie. Violetta is another dangerous member who uses attack dogs and fights in brutal ways. The NCR has a hard time dealing with the Fiends because of how many there are and how violent they are. The gang constantly attacks NCR patrols and supply lines, making it hard for the NCR to control the area. There are also NCR bounties on Motor Runner, Cook, and Violetta, and the player can help take them down in Fallout New Vegas. The Fiends don't work with other gangs or factions. They're mostly hated by everyone, even other raiders. They mostly stick to their area west of New Vegas, but they'll attack anyone who gets too close. They're not smart or organized, but they're dangerous because they have numbers, firepower, and no fear of death. The Powder Gangers are a group of escaped prisoners in the Mojave Wasteland. They used to be locked up by the new California Republic at the NCR Correctional Facility, a large prison near the town of Prim. The NCR had the prisoners doing hard labor, like blasting through rock to build railroad tracks. That's how the prisoners got access to dynamite, which they later used to start a riot and take over the prison. After they escaped, they called themselves the Powder Gangers because of how good they were at using explosives. They spread out into smaller groups and started raiding towns, robbing caravans, and attacking travelers. Most of them just want to stay free and cause chaos. The leader of the Powder Gangers inside the prison is Eddie, who runs things from the old warden's office. He tries to keep the gang together, but many of the prisoners do whatever they want. There's also a guy named Joe Cobb, who got kicked out of the prison during a power struggle. He sets up a small group near Good Springs, trying to get revenge and prove himself. The Powder Gangers are a threat to nearby towns, especially early in the game. If the player helps the town of Good Springs, they'll end up fighting against Joe Cobb and his men. Or the player can help the Powder Gangers instead and let them take over the town. Some of the gang members want more than just violence. One former prisoner named Myers used to be a sheriff and wants to return to being one. If the player helps him, he can become the new sheriff of Prim. The Powder Gangers have dynamite, basic guns, and old prison uniforms. They aren't the smartest or the strongest faction, but their explosives make them dangerous, especially in large groups. The Jackals are a small and violent raider gang in the Mojave Wasteland. They first appear in Fallout New Vegas. The Jackals aren't very organized and are known for being cruel, wild, and savage. They used to be part of a group of prisoners held at the NCR Correctional Facility, just like the Powder Gangers. After the prison riot, some of the inmates split off and formed their own gangs. The Jackals were one of those groups. Instead of staying in one place, the Jackals travel in small bands and live in scattered camps across the Mojave. You can find them mostly near Nipton and along roads in the southern part of the map. They don't have a real base or a known leader, and they don't follow any real rules. The Jackals are extremely aggressive and attack anyone they see. They don't take prisoners, and some people say they might even eat their victims, though that's never been proven. Their behavior is more like wild animals than humans. They often wear scrap armor, torn clothing, and sometimes decorate themselves with bones or blood. They use cheap weapons like pistols, knives, and baseball bats, and they often fight in small groups. They aren't very skilled in combat, but their violence and unpredictability makes them dangerous, especially for travelers or low-level players. Other gangs like the Great Khans and Fiends look down on the Jackals. Even among raiders, they're seen as the lowest and most out of control. The NCR barely bothers with them because they're seen not as a real threat. Still, they cause enough trouble that they can't be completely ignored. The Jackals exist just to take, kill, and survive. They're one of the weaker raider groups in the Mojave, but they're still a danger if you run into them unprepared. The Vipers are a small but dangerous raider gang found in the Mojave Wasteland in Fallout New Vegas. They aren't as well known as the Great Khans or Fiends, but they're just as deadly. The Vipers used to be a cult that worshipped snakes. Over time, they became more violent and turned into full-on raiders, and kept their obsession with snakes and poison. Years before the events of New Vegas, the NCR nearly wiped out the Vipers during a military campaign. The survivors scattered and fled east into the Mojave Desert. They now live in small camps near roads and rocky areas, especially around Highway 95 in the hills near Nipton. The Vipers usually travel in groups and set up ambushes for travelers, NCR patrols, and caravans. They fight using melee weapons, guns, and sometimes chems, but they're mostly known for using poison blades and sneaky tactics. They don't have a central base or a clear leader. Most of the Vipers are violent, half-crazed, and act more like a tribe than a real gang. They cover themselves in leather and scraps, often wearing fangs, skulls, or bones as decoration. Some still believe in the old snake religion and think that killing with poison brings them power. Unlike other gangs, the Vipers aren't involved in major conflicts like the NCR versus Kaiser's Legion War. They're just out in the desert doing their own thing, attacking anyone who gets near and staying hidden. Most people in the Mojave see them as a leftover threat, not a serious enemy, but they're still dangerous if you're caught off guard. The Gunners are a large, heavily armed mercenary group in the Commonwealth, the setting of Fallout 4. Unlike most raider gangs, the Gunners are organized like a private army. They have ranks, missions, and strongholds, and they're known for taking jobs that involve violence, theft, or killing, as long as they get paid. The Gunners aren't loyal to any cause or faction. They fight for whoever gives them the most caps. That can mean guarding a caravan, wiping out a settlement, or stealing advanced tech. Because of this, they're hated by most groups in the Commonwealth, including the Minutemen, the Brotherhood of Steel, and even other raiders. Their main base is Gunner Plaza, a heavily fortified building that used to be a TV station. It's filled with high-level enemies, turrets, and some of their top commanders. The Gunners also control smaller outposts, rooftops, and overpasses across the map. They move in squads and follow military-style tactics, making them much tougher than regular raiders. The Gunners wear combat armor, often customized with logos or camouflage. They carry powerful weapons like assault rifles, laser guns, and grenades. Some even wear power armor. They're trained to fight in groups, take cover, and use teamwork, which makes them very dangerous in combat. A well-known gunner leader is Clint, who took part in the attack on Quincy. He betrayed the Minutemen and helped the Gunners take over town. He's now one of the toughest gunner bosses in the game. The Gunners don't offer quests or dialogue choices. They're always hostile to the player. You'll run into them during random encounters or when exploring buildings they've taken over. They act like elite raiders but with better weapons, armor, and training. They're one of the strongest enemy groups in the Commonwealth and a constant threat to anyone who isn't part of their crew. The Forged are a small but dangerous raider gang in the Commonwealth, found in Fallout 4. What makes them different from other raider groups is their obsession with fire, metal, and strength. They believe only the toughest people deserve to survive, and they use fire as a way to test that strength. The Forged are based in Saugus Ironworks, an old steel factory north of the Slog. The entire building is filled with fire, molten metal, and dangerous machinery. Inside, there are traps, flamethrowers, and armed guards. It's hot, smoky, and built like a fortress. The leader of the Forged is a man named Slag. He's a brutal and controlling raider who uses fear and violence to stay in charge. Slag believes that fire proves who is worthy. People who can't take the heat or follow orders are either kicked out or burned alive. One of the first times players meet the Forged is during the quest Out of the Fire. A teenager named Jake Finch has run away from home and stolen a special sword from his family to join the Forged. His father, Abraham Finch, asks the player to bring him back. When the player finds Jake, Slag is forcing him to kill a captured traitor as a test. The player can step in and either fight the Forged or try to talk Jake into leaving. The Forged use flamers, molotovs, and melee weapons. Many of them wear armor made from scrap metal and scorched clothing. They're all about close-range fighting and causing as much destruction as possible with fire. They don't have outposts or alliances. They only care about dominating others through heat, pain, and control. If someone can't handle the fire, they're seen as weak and useless. The Forged aren't a large group, but they're aggressive and heavily armed, making them a serious threat if you cross them. The Disciples are one of the 3 main raider gangs featured in Fallout 4 Nuka World DLC. They are known for being the most violent, bloodthirsty, and unpredictable of the 3 gangs. The Disciples enjoy torture, murder, and showing off their powers through fear and pain. Their leader is Nisha, a calm but deadly raider who took control by killing the last gang boss. She believes only the strong should lead, and she doesn't hesitate to use violence to prove a point. Her top enforcer is Savoy, who acts as her right-hand man. He's just as brutal as she is, but also understands when to use caution. The Disciples are based in Fizz Top Mountain, one of the zones in the Nuka World theme park. Their hideout is filled with blood, bones, cages, and torture tools. It's a clear warning to anyone who steps inside. They aren't just raiders, they enjoy making others suffer. They fight using melee weapons, spiked armor, and sometimes guns, but their preferred way to kill is up close and personal. They often use blades, machetes, or custom-made weapons with spikes and hooks. Their armor is covered with bones, blood, and chains. The Disciples don't care about making deals or playing politics. They're only loyal to the overboss, the player, if they're given power and land. If they feel ignored or disrespected, they will turn on the overboss without warning. Nisha even says she's ready to kill the player if they show weakness. They don't get along with the other 2 raider gangs, the Operators and the Pack. The Disciples think the Operators are too soft and greedy, and they see the Pack as weird and untrustworthy. If the player sides against the raiders and takes back Nuka World for settlers, the Disciples become one of the final enemies. They'll fight to the death, refusing to back down. The Disciples don't want peace, they want control through fear and violence. The Operators are one of the 3 main raider gangs in the Fallout 4 Nuka World DLC. Unlike the other gangs, the Operators are more focused on money, control, and planning. They act more like a criminal organization than a group of wild raiders. They care about getting rich, staying alive, and looking good while doing it. The gang is led by Mags Black, who runs things with her brother William Black and their bodyguard Lizzie. Mags is smart and confident, and she always tries to stay calm and in control. She believes that strength isn't about blood and violence, it's about power, wealth, and careful decisions. The Operators are based in the Parlor, one of the main zones in Nuka World. Their hideout looks cleaner and more stylish than the others, with red curtains, fancy furniture, and guards dressed in dark, polished armor. They don't decorate with blood or bones like the Disciples, and they don't act like animals like the Pack. They use silenced weapons, laser guns, and other advanced gear. They prefer to attack from a distance or in stealth, taking out enemies quickly and quietly. Their armor is sleek and customized, and they move in well-trained groups. The Operators only follow the player if they're given power and control over different park zones. If they don't get their share, they start to question the player's leadership. Mags is polite at first, but if she feels the Operators are being treated unfairly, she'll stop playing nice. The Operators don't care about causing chaos or spilling blood unless it helps them get what they want. They look down on the Disciples for being violent and messy, and they see the Pack as strange and unreliable. If the player turns against the raiders and supports the settlers, the Operators will fight back. They're organized and well-equipped, making them tough enemies in battle. The Pack is one of the 3 main raider gangs in Fallout 4 Nuka World DLC. Unlike the other gangs, the Pack follows the idea that strength is everything, and the strongest person should always be in charge. They act more like wild animals than people, and they live by a rule. The strong rule, the weak serve. The Pack is led by a man named Mason, who became alpha by beating the last leader in a fight. That's how leadership works in the Pack. If someone wants to take over, they have to challenge the boss in front of everyone. If they win, they're the new alpha. If they lose, they probably die. The Pack is based in Safari Adventure, a zoo-themed area in Nuka World. Their hideout is full of animal cages, colorful lights, and strange decorations made from bones, toys, and fur. The place is loud, chaotic, and dangerous, just like the gang itself. Members of the Pack dress in bright colors, animal masks, and spiked armor. Their gear might look silly at first, but it's part of their strategy. The Pack wants to confuse and scare their enemies by being unpredictable and wild. They use a mix of melee weapons, guns, and shock collars, and they usually fight in groups. The Pack respects the player only if they're strong and give them enough control over the park zones. If the player seems weak or favors the other gangs too much, the Pack will start looking for a new leader. They don't get along with the other gangs. The Pack thinks the Operators are boring and greedy, and they think the Disciples are too bloodthirsty and crazy, even for them. If the player sides with the settlers and turn against the raiders, the Pack becomes one of the final enemies. They won't back down, they'll fight like wild animals until the end. The Rust Devils are a raider gang introduced in Fallout 4 Automatron DLC. They're different from most raider gangs because of their obsession with robots and technology. They're based out of the Fort Hagen Satellite Array, a heavily guarded bunker filled with traps, turrets, and robot parts. Inside, the halls are dark, full of junk and machinery, and crawling with customized hostile robots. The Rust Devils don't just use robots, they decorate their armor and living spaces with robot pieces and treat their machines like trophies. Their leader is a woman named Ivy, who wears custom power armor made from a sentry bot. She's strong, aggressive, and sees herself as superior to regular raiders and wastelanders. She believes that the future belongs to those who can control and become like machines. The Rust Devils use heavily modded robots including Assaultrons, Protectrons, Mr. Handys, and other deadly machines. They also carry powerful energy weapons, flamers, and melee weapons made from metal scraps and robot limbs. Many members wear armor made from robot parts, giving them a unique and intimidating look. They don't work with other gangs or care about the major factions like the Minutemen, Brotherhood of Steel, or Institute. They operate alone and are mostly interested in collecting tech, especially Robo-Brains, which are rare robots with human brains inside. During the Automatron DLC, the player discovers that the Rust Devils have been stealing robots sent out by the Mechanist, another major character in the story. Eventually, the player is sent to their base to take them out and recover important parts. The Rust Devils are not a large gang, but they are dangerous because of their robot army, heavy firepower, and complete lack of mercy. They're one of the toughest enemy groups added in the DLC. The Trappers are a hostile raider group found in the Fallout 4 Far Harbor DLC. They live on Mount Desert Island off the coast of Maine, where thick, radioactive fog covers most of the land. The Trappers weren't always raiders. Many of them were once hunters, fishermen, or settlers. But over time, exposure to the fog, radiation, and isolation caused them to go insane. Now the Trappers act like wild animals. They have no real goals or plans beyond killing, hunting, and surviving. Most of them have completely lost their minds. They scream to themselves, wear bones and animal parts as armor, and set up deadly traps all over the island. That's where they get their name. They're obsessed with using traps like bear traps, tripwires, and mines to catch people or animals. Trappers can be found all across the island, usually in ruined buildings, old cabins, shipwrecks, and lighthouses. Their camps are messy and dangerous, often filled with traps, dead animals, and signs of violence. They don't follow a central leader or any organized structure. They live in scattered groups and fight anyone who enters their territory. They use weapons like hunting rifles, shotguns, harpoon guns, and melee weapons. Some of their gear is made from animal hides or metal scraps, and many of them are high-level enemies that can be hard to kill. Some trappers also use chems and behave more aggressively during combat. One major location where the player fights trappers is Brooks Head Lighthouse, one of their largest strongholds. It's filled with traps, enemies, and loot, and it's easy to get overwhelmed if you're not careful. Another key area is Rayburn Point, which also holds strong enemies and rare gear. The Trappers don't work with any factions like Acadia, Far Harbor, or Children of Atom. They're completely wild and hostile to everyone. If you see Trappers in the distance, it usually means a dangerous fight is coming. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, maybe leave a like.